Matters that we might be able to deal with just on the papers. One, first of all, is there's a motion by the defendant to exclude all testimony of Mr. Bradley on the basis that there is a significant risk he will volunteer things that the court has ordered or has ordered or may order. There'd be no testimony with respect to. Anything you wanted to add to the paper?
No, Your Honor. No, other than, Your Honor, we've covered that with his attorney and with Mr. Bradley himself about what the court has ruled on, and that he's not to guess or think. If there's a question, that he would speculate as to the answer, that in no way would he answer a question as relating to those things without further instruction.
Thank you. That motion to reconsider the admissibility and exclude testimony, Mr. Bradley, on the basis that his testimony carries a high degree of risk of the necessity of mistrial, is denied. The court, once we've ascertained the scope of his testimony, will ask his counsel to go over with him that the court will and has ordered him not to testify to those matters and to any other matters the court may add to that. His so testifying, he will understand, may result in contempt, and to the extent there's any question may be ambiguous, the counsel can approach sidebar and see whether the defense agrees that a leading question in certain areas may be appropriate. Mark, can I give you this?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. On the list, 1A through K of the motion that was filed today, which of those, if any, does the Commonwealth actually intend to seek evidence on?
A, Your Honor. A, Your Honor, C, not in the sense of anything about paranoia. This was dealt with previously, and I think the court had indicated that it would just be more about statements made, not characterization statements, and it would just be his distrust. He made statements about being distrustful of people around him.
Otherwise, not anything in C?
Otherwise, not anything in C, Your Honor.
So it's really something else.
Right, which just...
Right, we'll get to on what is. So it's sort of an addition, but it's not C.
Correct. Not D, not E, not F, G, but not with the characterizations, just his description of all his observations. Not H, not I, J, to the extent that he would testify to his own knowledge of meeting Papu in Florida. And obviously, I don't intend to get into K. And again, if somehow he's just examined about what his thoughts are towards the defendant, that's another matter, but we wouldn't take that on in direct examination.
Okay, so of these items, it's A, G in terms of observations, J, and statements of distrust, which are not
Yes, Your
in
Honor.
this.
Thank you.
And then so I will let you do or ask you to do a voir dire sort of your direct, leaving out, any general background information, how long they were friends or how they met, but sort of going to areas that.
Focused on this motion or anything?
Focus on anything you intend to elicit on direct. Was it?
I do think it would be helpful for Mr. McCauley to cover Mr. Bradley's account of his relationship with Mr. Hernandez, how it evolved.
Well, maybe helpful in front of the jury. I'm not sure why we need it now unless there's something particular that you think you're going to object to. I'm just trying to have this be areas that are dealing with, what you put in the earlier motion to exclude character information, etc. And so to the extent he knew him for X years and they went to school together, or
I worry that there's things in their early relationship that he would testify to that would be improper, and I just asked Mr. McCauley to cover that.
Maybe if I could just make a representation, Your Honor. I just intend to ask him about when he first met him. They met. Okay, I'll be glad to do that. Okay. Sir, if you'd state your full name, please.
Bradley,
And just spell your last name.
Bradley,
How old are you, sir?
32 years old,
And where did you grow up?
Hartford, Connecticut.
And did you have you lived most of your life there?
Yes,
Okay. At some point, did you meet an individual by the name of Aaron Hernandez?
yes,
And you see him in court?
yes.
Okay. And how did you meet him?
I met him through a mutual friend,
And who was that friend?
Daquan Brooks,
Okay. When did you meet him approximately?
2010.
Okay. And when you first met him, just describe your relationship.
It was just, it wasn't much of a relationship. I met him through a mutual friend, and the kid, Daquan Brooks, was living with me, so he told me he was going to invite his friend over, who was Aaron Hernandez at the time, and I allowed him to, and that's the beginning of the relationship.
Okay. And how long then did you have contact with him? Was it over the next few years?
Yes,
Okay. And during that time, did your relationship change?
yes, it progressed from when I first met him.
Okay. And at some point, did you become friends?
At some point, yes.
And just tell us approximately when do you recall where you considered him a friend of yours?
To the best of my knowledge, it would be 2011, after his first full season in the NFL was completed.
Okay. And at that time, were you seeing him more frequently?
Yes, I began to see him more frequently,
Okay. And how often would you see him?
3 to 4 times a week.
Okay. Would you go to his home?
Yes, I did.
And when I say go into his home, did he have a home at some point in Plainville?
Yes, he did at the
Did you ever
beginning.
go to that?
Yes, I have been there
Okay.
on a few
And-
occasions.
And later on, did he move?
Yes, he did.
And where did he move to?
North Attleboro.
And did you ever go to that home?
Yes, I did.
Now, once he had moved to North Attleboro, how frequently would you go to that home?
Well, that's at the time. Once he moved to North Attleboro, that's when I saw him 3 to 4 times a week. At the beginning, it wasn't that frequent.
Okay. And did you ever stay over at his home?
Yes.
And when you say 3 or 4 times a week, what would you be doing with him or for him?
Different things, different occasions. Sometimes we would just be hanging out. There were times I would bring him marijuana. There were times, different things. I've serviced his vehicle, tires, flat tires. I've done shopping, some shopping. I've done various things, different favors for him.
Okay. And with regard to the marijuana, you said at some point you were getting marijuana for him?
Yes.
And when did that begin?
That's how our relationship began, kind of, for the most part.
Okay.
That's what our relationship was at the beginning.
I see. And just tell us about that. How often were you getting the marijuana when your relationship first began?
When he requested, sometimes once in a week, sometimes more.
Okay. And what quantities of marijuana were you getting?
Anywhere from 1 ounce to 4 ounces at times.
And would he give you the money for that?
At times at the beginning, sometimes he didn't give me the money up front. There were times he owed me money.
Okay. Did that, providing marijuana to Mr. Hernandez, did that endure for the entirety of your relationship?
For the majority of it, yes.
Okay. In terms of, did you ever see him smoking marijuana?
Yes.
How often?
Frequently.
Okay. Would you smoke with him?
Yes.
And when you say weekly, how much marijuana would he smoke?
Frequently.
Oh, I beg your pardon. When you say frequently, describe how often was that?
It was quite often. I mean, well, in regards to, like in one sitting, you mean?
Or just in the course of a day, would you see him smoke every day?
Yes.
How often in a day's time? How many times in a day's time?
Chain smoking.
Okay. And as a result, how frequently would you then have to get marijuana for him?
I mean, it varied. Sometimes there would be times once a week. There would be times more than once in a week. I mean, it would depend on how often he requested it.
Okay. And during this time, would you be bringing the marijuana from out of state to North Attleboro?
Oh, there has been times, but the times I would bring it from state, from Connecticut to North Attleboro, those are the times it was smaller quantities. But the times when it was, 4 ounces or something, those were the times he came and picked it up.
Okay, when you say he came to pick it up, where would he pick it up?
Bristol.
Okay. Now, when you would visit the home, did you ever have occasions to spend any time in the basement?
I spent the majority of my time in the basement.
Okay, and is there a bedroom down there?
Yes, there is.
Did you ever stay in that bedroom?
Yes, that's the bedroom I always stayed in.
Okay, and how many times would you say you stayed in that bedroom?
I couldn't put a number on it. A lot of times.
Okay. And during the time that you'd indicated you'd smoke with the defendant, where would you smoke?
In the basement.
Okay. Did you ever see a particular box in the basement?
Yes.
And what kind of box was it?
It was a lock box. It was like a safe.
And did it have a combination or a key, if you know?
It had a key.
Okay. And did you ever have an opportunity to see what was in that lockbox?
Yes.
Okay, and what was that?
There was a firearm in the box before. I saw cash in there. I saw marijuana joints as well in there.
And what kind of, when you say a firearm, just describe what you saw.
It's a semi-automatic pistol.
What color was it?
Silver grayish.
Okay.
And
Now, at some point, your relationship ended in February 2013.
correct.
Prior to that, when was the last time that you had seen
Could you
the...
just go back to the box? Where did you
See the box?
In the basement.
Where in the basement, sir?
On the bar area was where I usually saw it.
Okay. And when you saw it in the bar area, was anybody doing anything with it? Did you see anyone either moving it or opening it?
Oh, Mr. Hernandez was the one who would always open it.
Okay. And then after opening it, did you ever see him put it somewhere else?
Yeah, I can recall him removing it from like a closet down there. There was some type of closet, like another door off to the side. If I'm not mistaken, near the trophy case. There was times it was back there. But for the most part, it was usually out on the bar area.
Okay. And I think what I had asked you was prior to, you last saw him in February 2013?
Correct.
And prior to that, do you remember the last occasion you saw that, the gun in the box?
Up until, I mean, I can't remember the exact date, but as long as I can remember, you know, it was there.
Okay. Now, in February, do you recall, actually, you had previously testified, is that right? At the grand jury?
Yes, I did.
And do you recall indicating it was December, January when you had last seen the box with the firearm in it?
Yes.
Now, with regard to over this time, just how did you consider him in regards as a friend?
Up until February, I considered him a good friend, one of my best friends.
Okay. And as a result of now you feeling that, or you considering him a good friend, did he ever take you anywhere traveling with him?
Yes.
And where did you travel with him?
As far as airplanes go, Miami.
Okay. And how many occasions did you go to that area?
3 definitely, I think 4. I'm not sure, but 3 definitely.
Okay. And just focusing on the last occasion that you went, was that in February 2013?
Yes.
And when you arrived, do you remember what airport you arrived at?
West Palm,
And when you arrived, who were you traveling with?
Mr. Hernandez.
Anybody else?
No one else the last time, just me and Mr. Hernandez.
And when you arrived, did anybody meet you at the airport?
Yes.
And just tell us about that.
They were friends of his. 2 gentlemen picked us up from the airport. And
Had you ever met them before?
prior to that, no, I never met those.
After being picked up, did you go somewhere? Did these friends of the defendant drive somewhere?
Yes, we went to a hotel.
And where was that?
It was in West Palm Beach, Florida.
Do you recall the name of it?
They had Spring in it. I can't remember the whole name of the
And
hotel.
how long did you stay there?
At that hotel, one night, I want to say, at that particular hotel, one night.
Okay. And did you then go to a different hotel?
Yes,
How many days were you down there with the defendant?
3.
And was there an occasion that when you went back to the hotel that you saw other individuals?
Yes, I did see other friends of his.
Okay, and how many friends of his did you see?
There were at least 5 guys that were friends of his
And where did you see them?
inside of the hotel that I first went to upon arrival in West Palm Beach, Florida.
And at some point, when you were back at the hotel, did you ever see any guns?
Yes, there was a firearm present.
Okay, and when you say the firearm present, did you see who was handling the firearm, or who had the firearm?
One of his friends was the one who, pulled the firearm out. And at some point, Mr. Hernandez handled it. He passed it to Mr. Hernandez, and he had it in his hand, looking at it.
Okay, and at some point, did you see what Mr. Hernandez did with the firearm?
Yeah, once we left shortly after that to go out, and he left the firearm on the chair.
Okay. Did you make observations of that firearm?
Yes, I did see
Okay,
it.
and just describe what color it was.
It was black.
Okay, and did you recognize it as a particular type of firearm?
It appeared to be a Glock to me
Okay, and how did you know that?
because they look different, they're shaped different. The top appeared to be plastic or some kind of other material, not metal. Top part.
Okay, and after making that observation, when you said you went out, did you later on you return to the hotel?
Yes, at some point we did return there.
Okay, who was staying in that hotel room where you saw the Glock?
You mean who stayed there? Who was
Yes.
some friends of his. I don't know all of those guys' government's names.
Okay, and
So that wasn't a hotel room that you were sleeping in?
No, we did stay there one day.
The particular room, I think Ms. McCauley's asking.
yes, The room that you've just described, that you were there and you saw the defendant place the firearm,
Yeah.
whose room was that? Or when you said you stayed at, who stayed there?
Me, Mr. Hernandez, the gentleman that picked us up from the airport, well, both the gentlemen that picked us up from the airport
Okay.
are the ones that stayed there.
Okay. And at some point, did you, after, when you last saw the firearm left in the hotel room, did you see the firearm again?
No, I don't recall seeing that firearm again.
Did you return back to that hotel room after that?
Yes, we did. From the first time I left in the morning, you mean? Or
Yes.
early in the day? Yes, we did return back there.
Okay. And then after, let me ask you this, while you were in,
When you left, it was left on a chair.
Yes.
And when you came back into the room, it wasn't there anymore.
Oh, you mean that particular room? I was confused.
But you've been asking about that particular room. Did all four of you sleep in that particular room?
Yes, we did.
And then you said when you left, it was on a chair.
Yes.
And when you came back, it was no longer on the chair?
Oh, no, I don't recall seeing the firearm on that exact chair when I came back.
okay, so when you returned back, the next occasion you returned back, do you know whether you directed your attention to that area where you had last seen it?
No, I don't, but there were several other gentlemen in the room. You know, we slept there, but there were like at least 5 guys. There were different guys coming and going.
Okay, and with regard to when you had come back, did you stay that night in that hotel room?
Yes, the first night we got there is the night we stayed there.
Okay. And then, obviously, you were down there with Mr. Hernandez for another day or two?
Yes.
Okay. And then after that, well, while you were down there, did you meet an individual by the name of Papu?
Yes.
Okay, and where did you meet him?
He was actually one of the gentlemen in that room the first day I got there.
Okay. And had you met him before?
No.
Okay. Now, later on, at that time, were you introduced to him by that nickname, Papu?
I was never formally introduced to him, but that's the name that they were calling, that's the name they were using for him.
Okay. And later on, did you happen to see a picture of him through some media source?
Yes, I did.
And did you recognize him as that same person who was being referred to as Papu?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Now, you know an individual by the name of, or nickname Bo?
Yes, I know of him.
Okay, and also Charlie Boy?
Yes.
Had you ever seen those two individuals with the defendant?
Oh, yes, I saw them with Mr. Hernandez before.
Okay, approximately how many times?
You may separate each one.
Sure. Just in total, how many times have you seen?
I saw Bo with Mr. Hernandez on a few different occasions. Maybe 3 that I can remember.
Okay, and what about Charlie Boy?
Two particular times that I can remember.
Okay. And do you know what relationship they had with the defendant?
They were friends of his.
Okay. And just on those occasions that you saw them with the defendant, just describe what were the circumstances? And again, maybe to separate it, unless there was an overlap between the two of them.
Yes, one time there was an overlap between the two of
Okay,
them.
tell us about that one.
I believe I was at a Christmas party. It was a holiday gathering on Lake Avenue. It was one of the times I went over there, and those two were together. And Mr. Hernandez and myself, I was there as well.
Okay.
And
Whose
another,
home was that, sir? Do you know whose home that was?
yes, that's the home of Tanya Singleton.
Okay. And then,
And
go ahead.
another time, my car, I had got a flat tire on my car driving back from Mass, and those individuals came to get him. I called AAA to come service the car. Instead, he called them to come pick him up, so they came and picked him up.
Okay, who were you? You were traveling back from Massachusetts to Connecticut?
To Connecticut, yes.
Who were you traveling with?
me and Mr. Hernandez.
Okay, and something happened to one of your tires?
Yeah, one of my tires caught a flat. I caught a flat tire on my car.
Okay, so did you take some action to call AAA?
Yes, I did.
And while you were doing that, did Mr. Hernandez do something?
Yes.
What did he do?
He called one of those two gentlemen because they came
Okay.
to pick him up.
Did you see him using his phone?
Yes.
And then sometime after that, did you see anybody show up?
Oh, yes.
Who showed up?
Bo and Charlie Boy.
Okay, and what did they do when they showed up?
They showed up and they asked me if I was straight, and I said yes because I called AAA, and he left with them in their car, and I waited for AAA to come.
Okay. Now, did you ever have an occasion to meet Bowden Lloyd?
Yes, I saw him one time, or 2 times that I remember.
Okay, and tell me about the first occasion.
The first occasion was I was in the kitchen of Mr. Hernandez's home.
Do you remember when that was approximately? What month?
I'm gonna say sometime between December and January, around the holidays and New Year.
And was this just relating it to in that February trip that you took to Florida? Was that either December or January, or was it sometime prior to that?
That was prior to my Florida trip, if that's what you're asking me.
Yes, but just in terms of the year, what year was it that you first saw Bowden Lloyd?
It was towards the end of our friendship, so
Okay, so would that be either December 2012 or January 2013?
yes, one of the two.
Okay, and where did you see him?
Excuse me, I saw him in the kitchen of
Kitchen?
Mr. Hernandez's home.
Okay, and what were you doing? Were you with anybody in the kitchen?
Yes, I was standing with Mr. Hernandez in the kitchen.
And when you saw him, just tell us, was he with anybody?
Yes, he was with his girlfriend at the time.
Did you see where they were in the kitchen, where they were coming from?
They came in through the garage entrance door. There's a door. If you're coming through the garage, there's a door that leads right to the kitchen. And they came in, and they just, walked by, and they went through the kitchen, into the living room, and upstairs.
And when they walked by, what were they doing?
They were holding hands when they walked by.
Okay. And was there any conversation or greeting between Bowden and his girlfriend, or you or Mr. Hernandez?
No, there weren't any words exchanged
Okay.
between.
And as a result of that, did Mr. Hernandez say something?
Yes, he stated that he thought it was rude of them to kind of, come in and
Okay. And did he say anything else?
well, he just said it was rude for him to not, he didn't speak or whatever. And, I kind of just agreed that it was a little rude to not say hi or anything, and that was it.
Okay. Did you see him after that? Was there ever another occasion you saw Mr. Lloyd?
Yes, there was one other occasion I was pulling into the driveway of Mr. Hernandez's home, and he was leaving out.
Okay. And when you say he was leaving?
Well, him and his girlfriend at the time were leaving out together.
I see. And was Mr. Hernandez near them or around?
I don't recall if Mr. Hernandez was out there. I don't think so. I think I was just pulling up and I was kind of going to go in.
Okay. Now, at some time, there was a child born to Mr. Hernandez and his girlfriend, Shauna Jones.
Correct.
And was there ever a conversation between you and Mr. Hernandez about who might be the godfather?
Yeah, we had a discussion, and we had, I guess, to me, I was the godfather because we had a discussion and he said I was, so I guess it was an unofficial type of thing.
I see.
But
Okay. And with regard to, you had spent a fair amount of time with Mr. Hernandez during the course of your relationship.
yes,
And were there occasions that you, while you're with him, that he made certain statements to you about trusting people?
yes, he indicated to me that he had a hard time trusting people in general.
Okay. And do you recall what else he said about that? Why he had difficulty trusting people?
He oftentimes felt like, people were trying to use him. He stated an instance where some old friends of his, were ungrateful for things that he did for them. And he just felt like he was being used. So he didn't really, trust people in that sense. That was, one area which made him not trust people, and he was just unreasonably suspicious of.
Well, I'm going to strike that. You've been asked what he said to you.
Okay. How many occasions did he say about not trusting people?
I mean, it was very often. It came up a lot. You know, the conversations arose a lot about it.
Did you notice any change in his behavior towards you in terms of trusting you?
Not up until a certain point. I mean, I thought for the most part that he did trust me. You know, I knew a lot about him, but
I'm going to ask you to listen carefully to the question and just answer the question that's asked.
Did you notice, did he ever say anything to you about trust?
Specifically, yes. Well, he stated that he had a hard time trusting people.
And at any point, did he ever tell you, make any statement about not saying
Well,
any?
I'm going to ask you to not ask leading questions.
Okay. What did he say to you about whether you should talk about certain things that you two did or not talk about certain things that you two did?
Repeat it. What did he say to me?
You know, what, if anything, did he ever say about whether you should be talking about certain things that you did with him or that you knew about him?
I can't exactly, remember exactly what and at what points he said that, but there were plenty of times.
What do you remember him saying, even if you can't remember the time?
Well, I can't give an exact, in the context of the conversation, I can't specify every, conversation we had in which...
Just general, I mean, you were asked general, did that topic ever come up?
Yes, he stated to me that he had a hard time trusting people, yes.
But what, if any, conversation, if ever there was any, about whether you should be talking about any of the things that you were doing?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained, if you want to. You may ask about any other conversations, but not put words into the witness's mouth.
Oh, okay, sir, I'm just trying to ask you, did he, what, if anything, did he say about what you should talk about, things that involved you and him?
Well, he said in conversation to me before that he doesn't like his business. I just can't give you exact specifics. It's hard for me to just...
Right, and I'm not specific, but just what did he say about his business?
He doesn't like people knowing his business. And he also stated before that he has a hard time trusting people.
Okay. And what did he, what, if anything, did he ever say about being suspicious of people?
He was unreasonably suspicious of people.
Strike that.
Okay, but again, just if you can just tell us what he said,
He didn't want of people or just things in general.
Just of being, let's start with, what, if anything, did he ever say about being suspicious?
He was suspicious of iPhone.
What he said, not what you concluded.
He didn't want me to use iPhones around him. He stated that to me.
Did he explain why?
Because he stated that all conversations could be heard at any time through iPhones.
And did he give a reason why he thought that?
Yes, he said he was informed in a meeting, a team meeting that he had, in which a special operations guy was there and told him that iPhones can record at any time and you can hear conversations at any time through iPhones.
Okay. I can have a moment, Your Honor. And what, if anything, did he ever say about concerns of being followed?
Yes, oftentimes he thought he was being followed by helicopters or tailed by police,
Did he explain
feds.
why?
He would say all types of law enforcement that he was being followed by.
And did you, during the time you were in Florida, did you have an occasion to go to Belgrade?
Yes,
And what did you do in Belgrade? Was that occasion we were talking about in February 2013?
yes.
And just who did you travel to Belgrade with?
Mr. Hernandez?
Okay. Did you see any friends of Mr. Hernandez in Belgrade?
Yes,
And that individual that I had asked you about before, Papu, did you see him?
yes.
Was anything going on in Belgrade?
Yes, it was a party of sort. It was a friend of his won the Super Bowl, so they held the Super Bowl party, and we attended.
And I think those would be the subject areas that I would question him on direct examination.
Do you want to just have an argument, or is it...
Excuse me. I think it'd be appropriate to have argument,
Okay.
perhaps not with Mr. Bradley.
Right. You may step down.
If I may start towards the end, Your Honor, I think that last, I'm sorry.
I couldn't hear you. I just couldn't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry, Your Honor. If I may start towards the end, the last series of questions about trust, suspicion, people following, iPhones, paranoia, I think that should be ruled out. It's February or before February, and we're concerned with something that occurred in June. And B, it's essentially character or propensity evidence that doesn't have any relevance to our case or any issues in our case. So I would ask that the court, and I guess thirdly, it was the most general testimony without any details limbed in that I think should also give the court pause as to whether that is admissible. Secondly, Your Honor, the testimony about the firearm in the hotel room in Florida should be ruled out. From the witness's description of it, it appears that it was someone else's firearm. Someone else handed it to Mr. Hernandez. Mr. Hernandez had it in his hand and put it down on a chair, and they left, and Mr. Bradley never saw it again. And I think given the balancing that the court has done and continues to do about the probative value of evidence and the prejudicial effect, I think given that testimony, the prejudicial effect outweighs the probative value of it. I mean, and again, it's February, 4 months before the events here, and it's in Florida. So for those reasons, I would ask that the gun be excluded and the umbrella of character evidence be excluded.
And with respect to the firearm in the box with cash and marijuana joints?
Well, I mean, the court has ruled on that. The witness has a new wrinkle today, I think, that we haven't heard in any grand jury, in any interviews, in any pretrial prep session, that apparently it was in a closet in the trophy room. But I would reiterate our position that the firearm is obviously not the murder weapon. It's not described as anything consistent with a Glock. It's silver or gray in color, and so I would urge the court to exclude that firearm as well.
Your Honor, I would just say, with regard to, I don't know that that was, in terms of what he described as a door, closet, you'll remember, I think, from the walkthrough, where the trophy room was there's a door there. It's actually not a closet, it's a storage area. It's an unfinished storage area. But it would be, I think, the only closet or door off that area, because you remember the other way was there was a bathroom and then the stairs. With regard to the gun in Florida, the last that the witness sees the gun, it's in the possession.
But do you want to address any further the gun in the firearm in the box?
Well, he described it, I think, amply at the grand jury, Your Honor, with regards to that it was a silver gun. I think he excluded it as a revolver, said it was a semi-automatic. It was in the box that was then handled and possessed by the defendant. So, again, that issue, I think, was in some ways resolved a long time ago by the court making its ruling. I don't think there's anything about, today we're doing this as a sort of precautionary so that the witness understands the limits of his testimony, but not necessarily to now. I didn't understand that to be in serious question, that there would be some reason that on a prior occasion that was deemed to be admissible, and now somehow that wouldn't be. You still have the control, still have the box. It appears to be relevant based on other testimony in the case. And with regard to the access to the instrumentalities, the joint venture piece, you'll remember in the video there's when Wallace goes down to the basement, he comes out. This is in between the time before they leave. He's carrying a bag. So again, for all those reasons, I would think that would continue to be relevant and admissible evidence. With regard to the firearm in Florida, the witness has indicated that the last occasion he sees it, the defendant has it in his possession, is given to him by somebody else. He now appears to be controlling it, places it on a bed in the room that they ultimately stay in. I think what is relevant with regard to this, he describes as a Glock, but also that connection to Papu, which is clearly in the case. He describes Papu as an individual who was there at the hotel room as well, and then later they go back to Belglade, and there's a party, and Papu is there. I think there's some evidence of that as well in the case. So with regard to the access and then what followed, which was 2 months later, in April, the purchase of the vehicle. There's numerous phone calls that are being made in April prior to the purchase, and also prior to and then after the sending of that money, the wiring of the money to Oscar Hernandez. Again, I would see that as relevant and admissible in this case. And any other topics Your Honor would wish me to?
Third topic.
Third, which was, the suspicion, the characterization, Your Honor, I'm really not pressing that to the extent that I know the court has previously said characterizations can't be made by witnesses, but just, what's said about the conversations.
So I think there were sort of four things: the hard time trusting people in the context of old friends, being ungrateful for what he did for them. 2, he doesn't like people knowing his business. 3, the iPhone. And 4, believing he was being tailed by law enforcement.
Right, and again, to the extent that he made statements about being distrustful based on a prior experience, and statements that he was making about the phone, his concerns about the phone, or about people following him, again, where they're actual statements, and which is what I believe the court previously had indicated that.
Right, but we have to now look at what those statements are. So
yes,
they're somewhat different from in your proffer, in the original proffer. So just looking at these particular statements.
Well, again, I think that the court has heard his statements, and to the extent that they're relevant.
Right, so that's why I'm asking you to respond to the defense argument that these 4 statements, and you can deal them separately if you wish, but there were hard time trusting people. Old friends of his are ungrateful, not liking people knowing his business, not wanting him to use an iPhone, and believing he's being tailed by law enforcement.
Right. So, again, those statements of him distrusting people who are around him, having a hard time trusting, I think are relevant in this case, particularly in this. I've made the argument before, Your Honor, that the text message that comes in that precipitates certain events that seem to follow indicate a reason now, or some reason, that the defendant's upset about sharing certain information. This witness, and I think at one point, Your Honor, when we had been at the sidebar on Jeffrey London, you had indicated, well, he's not a friend of the defendant because he made certain statements about the defendant accusing him of being a snitch and being distrustful of him. You said, well, he wasn't a friend of his. Alexander Bradley obviously is a friend of his. Odin Lloyd, to the extent that these two were together on the night, on the Friday night into Saturday night, where he's then sending a text message that is indicative of being mad at himself for sharing information. And this witness would then put in evidence as a statement from the defendant about he didn't want people knowing his business. Odin Lloyd obviously was in a position to know his business, and obviously that there's some other corroboration via the text message that was a concern to him. So I think that's relevant, and again, not getting into characterizations, but just as to his statements on those matters.
Thank you.
Thank you.
With respect to observing firearm cache and marijuana in the box, the court will permit that evidence, find that it is relevant and more probative than prejudicial. I will limit it to testimony by the witness about objects that may have been seen in the box. Can be considered solely with respect to the kinds of things that may have been stored in the box. Now, at the time we originally, back in December, had some, the issue first came up when we did the global motions in limine. There was a question as to whether or not Mr. Bradley should be allowed to testify as the description of the firearm. And at that time, after Mr. Sultan indicated that if he was going to testify, he did not have an issue with the court allowing him to characterize the color as a silver gun. So I just want to make sure that that's is your position today.
Yes, Your Honor.
And at that time as well, Mr. Sultan said he wanted to reserve on whether he wanted a limiting instruction, that it was limited to the box, to what was, it was limited to the kinds of things that might be stored in the box, which is the instruction I would propose to give. Do you want such a limiting instruction?
Perhaps we can confer before we bring the jury in on that issue, Your Honor.
Can we have 30 seconds now, Your Honor, to talk about that?
Sure. I mean, what I would say is you know, the intro I've used before, that he's not charged with committing any crimes other than charges containing the indictments, testimony by the witness about objects that may have, since we now got testimony about various objects that may have been seen in a box at the defendant's residence, can't be considered as proof the defendant has propensity, etc. If you credit evidence, that evidence, you can consider it to the extent you find it relevant solely on the issue of the kinds of things that may have been stored in that box, and for no other reason.
We would request that instruction, Your Honor.
Thank you. With respect to the firearm in the hotel, the court will allow the defendant, the witness, to so testify. I do find that it is more probative than prejudicial. Particularly given the presence of Mr. Oscar Hernandez, it shows an ability to access a weapon in Florida, and the court finds that there is this weapon could have been, might have been involved in the killing of Mr. Lloyd. I will give a limiting instruction with respect to that. With respect to the 4 categories of statements at the end, I will allow the witness to testify that Mr. Hernandez, on more than one occasion, made a statement to him that he had a hard time trusting people in general and that he didn't like people knowing his business. I will sustain the objection to the iPhone and the being tailed by a helicopter.
Does that include putting off limits the fear that he was being tailed by law enforcement?
As indicated, I will put in the not knowing, not liking people know his business and hard time trusting people, but the other statements. Mr. Swerbliss or Mr. Will you be able to talk to Mr. Bradley now to, again, remind him that the court explain the areas that the court has ruled he cannot testify to, and B, go over with him that should he choose to volunteer information that he has not testified to here, should he choose to blurt out information with respect to any of these matters or the or anything that he may have heard about or seen in Boston, or anything that his claim that he was shot by Mr. Hernandez, if any of that gets blurted out or volunteered, he has been ordered by this court not to do so, and the court will have no hesitation in holding him in contempt. If you could go over that with him, and as soon as you're ready, let us know so we can
I'll make that very clear as soon as I have access to him.
So we'll take a short. No, we have one other matter. Well, but counsel don't have to be here. The next is the defense request to impeach him with pending charges as well as a prior conviction. Is there any opposition to that?
Yes, there is, Your Honor.
Well, thank you, Your Honor. I set out the sequence of events in some detail in the motion, especially in connection with the different statements that Mr. Brett has given, and I think that the 2006 conviction clearly qualifies under our statute. The 3 pending charges, I think, qualify under the line of cases that suggest that a defendant is entitled to explore or establish that there are pending charges against a witness in circumstances where either the charges arose prior to giving an account of the testimony that he proposes to offer, or in circumstances when the story has evolved, the witness's testimony has evolved over time, and I think we fit under both of those. The first charge, in which Mr. Bradley broke the door down in his girlfriend's house, injured her, was before any cooperation with law enforcement. After giving grand jury testimony in this case, he then was arrested for violating a restraining order resulting from the first charge, and then 6 months later picked up a very serious case in which he emptied an automatic pistol into a nightclub and faces very serious charges on that. After that, those charges were brought in Superior Court in Connecticut. He then has a trial preparation interview with Mr. McCauley and Mr. Blomberg and Trooper Benson, and elaborates quite a bit on his story, and the evolution has continued today. So I think I should be able to explore the pending charges under the applicable case law, explaining the defendant's right of confrontation.
Your Honor, I haven't actually seen the certified conviction for on point 4, so I'd like to reserve just until I can see that. And, as to the pending charges, I think obviously things that tend to show bias or motivation are fair game, but what I'm concerned about, to be able to say to him, well, isn't it true on such and such date you were charged with offense, and that's still pending, and then in cross-examination, if he is hoping or something comes of that, that would be fair. But to start saying, well, isn't it true you broke down your daughter's, your girlfriend's?
I didn't understand the defense is trying to do anything other than you're charged with these things. Are you hoping you're going to get lenient treatment? I mean, as opposed to
I don't
going through
propose to go into the details of them, although frankly, I think one could make an argument that those details are relevant because of the amount of time he may be facing for some offense. But my proposal is that I be allowed to question him and establish that
that all these charges are pending, and depending on what redirect is, there may be a request to go into the details to show how significant the time is he may be facing. So I don't...
Well, okay, the way it's written out, I mean, and then his remark about breaking the door down and the restraining order, that he would just be limited to that. I think that obviously, for the purpose of attempting to show bias or motivation, is obviously...
He's charged with violation of protective order, interfering with an officer, resisting arrest. I mean, you're not objecting to him...
Asking that question, I think that is appropriate under the cases.
So maybe you could use this time while we're waiting for Mr. Bradley to look at the conviction. Let me know if there's any issue on the conviction. To the extent the defendant is seeking to impeach him with conviction, and it's a proper certified conviction, that's obviously will be allowed. On the charges, it's allowed without objection, and I will give limiting instructions with respect to both of them.
I just want to front an issue. I want to make sure that by establishing the pendency of the charges that I'm not opening the door to the Commonwealth coming in and saying, well, isn't the real reason you're testifying here not because you're hoping to gain some benefit, but for some other reason. So...
I'm sorry, Your Honor, I missed that.
They're asking that impeaching him with his prior conviction or pending charges not be deemed to be opening the door to the shooting incident.
The impeachment of the prior... If you wouldn't mind.
I'm sorry. I just want to make sure that if I establish the prior conviction and the pendency of the charges, that the Commonwealth does not seek to come back on redirect and say, well, isn't it true that the real reason you're testifying is not because you're hoping to curry favor with the prosecutors in Connecticut or here or somewhere else, but because you were shot by Mr. Hernandez or for some other reason.
Well, I wouldn't, Your Honor, I wouldn't ask him about it because we know that's not been admitted. But I do think, in fairness, if you ask a question about what his motivation is, obviously we're hoping that all of his answers would be truthful and that he'd be then able to answer in a truthful way that I presume if somebody shot me in the face, I wouldn't like them. Right. And that might be a separate motivation for me to come in and testify because I feel like he's injured me.
But that would just be the Commonwealth introducing additional bias against Mr. Hernandez, and presumably the Commonwealth has no reason to prove that he's biased against Mr. Hernandez.
Well, to disprove that he's trying to see, what I don't like is the attempt to marry him up to us, that somehow he's here because he anticipates cooperation agreement and reduced sentence and all these types of things where he has, I presume, his own motivation that is related to the shooting and unrelated to the charges.
The court will not deem impeachment with a prior conviction or pending charges to open the door. Obviously, there may be other things you ask, and which very well may, but impeaching him with his prior convictions and pending charges, the court rules that does not open the door to the shooting. So here's Mrs. Robles. So. While counsel for Mr. Bradley are conferring, if you could just show Mr. Macaulay the.
These are the certified information on the charges, and if there's stuff in the document, that this is the first one which is responded. The second one
Mr. Bradley?
If I could have just a few more moments, Mr. Prevost remained in the courtroom while a couple of other matters were discussed. He's related those to me. I'm going to communicate that to my client. It's a different one.
Well, Your Honor, while we're waiting, may counsel step out for a bathroom break?
hope it won't take more than 5 minutes, so why don't we just say 25:02 on this clock? Would all rise?